Microsoft says it shut down 6 fake websites created by Russian hackers designed to trick users into giving up personal and sensitive information. Microsoft says the attack mirrors the ones ahead of the 2016 election, but this time hackers are targeting conservative groups which disagree with President Trump on Russia and are seeking sanctions or pushing for human rights improvements in Russia. The targets include the Hudson Institute, a Washington conservative think tank, and the International Republican Institute, a nonprofit pro-democracy group whose board includes Senator John McCain. A short time ago, testimony from State Department officials at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing just punctuated where the attacks are coming from and who they support.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. And welcome back to the Lost-Begotten's channel, fake TV channel of science. Oh, get the little blue blanket out the background. And fix my little lumbar pillow so I don't hurt my poor little back. And before we begin, I just want to sing a little song. Oh yeah, I'm actually going to make notes here in a second as soon as I remember the words to this little parody that I had in my head as the intro thing was prepping. Let's see here, was it see that link, do not share, it's just the fancy bear. Yeah, that's about right. That's some special things have happened with what ironically enough is like a long-time nemesis of mine. Because Fancy Bear is the hacker group that created the Fancy Bear virus. And I remember this little shit with its little pink fucking teddy bear icon. Oh yeah, got a little pink teddy bear icon because they're fancy bears. And I wonder if that little pink bear is like somehow related to a mighty hamster of doom. You know, they're both marsupials after all. Wait a minute. So anyways, Microsoft, the company that could be happily back in court for monopoly stuff, if they would take my advice, or if I could even get the chance to give them my advice, because it's so damn good it couldn't possibly be given in any scenario other than like maximum digital security, no surveillance possible, you know. Like, I could help Microsoft make America great again. I could help them take our country back. Elves, dwarves, motherfucking unicorns. They don't want to see an IT guy make it. But anyway, so I have the rest of the notes from last night, which became kind of relevant after Lacey. I'm going to go ahead. Lacey, are you here? I'm going to go ahead and text her since I'm answering her fucking question that she sent me in a text message on a stream. I guess she should be here for that. And I go all the way back in my bedroom to get my phone before remembering it's on the charger. Right here, right here. Hello, phone. Oh. So, we talk a lot about the secret sons of Cain, as it were. The house of Seth. Not necessarily the sons of Seth. The Setites. Shibata. But, you don't really need to go into ancient history. ¿Qué pasó? Para ver qué pasado. To see what has happened. Pardon my grammar if I didn't get it right. So, hey Murphy's. Instead of ancient history, or even pre-9/11 history, you don't need to get distracted in the middle of a stream. No. Cat's trying to take off. Hi, Lacey. Text her. I see a number go up. I assume it's her. It's logical, not psychic. God, that was like a lot of hot air all at once. Turn the light off, the hallway.
It's like a bajillion degrees outside.
Gee. Amazing. So you can basically solve the entire 9/11 mystery. Not only like what the hell really happened, but why all the conspiracies and organized protests, and why was it backed by Russia, all of that. With just the one fact that all those conspiracies omit. Even Trump promoting videos on YouTube mentioning Trump and mentioning Larry Silverstein without mentioning the relationship between the two men. Cut it out. But you don't need to understand that. I mean, you need to understand that, but it's not necessary for perceiving the situation that we find ourselves in to understand why 2016 played out the way it did. I mean, the question of all questions is, why did Hillary Clinton reap the animosity of the Russian Empire? Why did they prefer Donald Trump why were these things seemingly done in equal parts? You know, it's not like there's any definitive evidence that they just hated Hillary Clinton so much they were just like, okay, well, Trump. Just like there's really no definitive evidence that they just loves Trump so much that that's where all their anti-Hillary shit came from. They've been going after the Clintons for years. Now, to understand this, you have to understand the broader strategic implications of who these people are. And of course, first, to allow someone who's been propagandized or who has this "oh but Hillary" attitude, or even thinks that somehow 2016 was the choice between the lesser of two evils. You need to understand how much of what you know about Hillary Clinton is bullshit. Meant to distract you from that broader strategic understanding of what the Clintons represent, of what they've done in this country and for this country, as well as the political mindset that responsible politicians in general promote versus, you know, divisionist windbags like Trump. But, you know, lately there's all this talk about, oh, Hillary was colluding with the Russians too. And it's just fucking schizophrenic sounding to me. It's crazy making. It just makes me twitch. To have the talking points for the Trumpists one day being that, you know, Hillary Clinton was colluding with the Russians, and on the next day they only supported Trump because they hated Hillary so much. These two things cannot be true in the same universe, okay? You have a bit of a disconnect there. I have a bit of a low cup of coffee. That's unfortunate. So what is it about Hillary? Were they colluding with her? Or did they hate her? Did they hate her? Were they colluding with her? Huh? I wonder what my little Russian troll would have to say about that, because he's done come up with the same fucking things. No, they just hated Hillary Clinton so much. But Hillary was colluding with them. But Fusion GPS. Oh, speeches. The Clinton Foundation. The Bilderbergers. Seth Rich. The Clinton murders. Blah, blah, blah. Should I go from this point backwards, or should I start from the so-called Clinton murders and go forward? Let's start with Whitewater. Fuck it. Whitewater. Okay. Understand the non-narrative story. Understand the wider strategic, hindsight is 20/20. So maybe you shouldn't keep thinking of things the way we thought of things at the time kind of story. And bear in mind that Whitewater took place in a post-Cold War environment, during which we were the only side that had stopped fighting. We thought basically they surrendered, but they didn't. We were told they surrendered, but they hadn't. We were told the Cold War was over, but it wasn't. And then you have the advent of Fox News. Playing out this drama that followed this promising presidential contender who had been basically in the presidential spotlight for a number of years before he was elected, by the name of Bill Clinton. And the reason why he was in the national spotlight wasn't just because of his great public speaking ability, his great debating ability, his charisma, all the stuff that we like about him. But something that we forgot that we need, it's just needed for the healing that is necessary in this country, to discuss things like this. He was somebody that united us. I know, because I was a fucking conservative as shit Republican at the time, and I thought Bill Clinton was great. And, having been basically a skinhead initiate, who came to my senses because, my brain was still fucking ripening. Mid-teenage years, on to early adulthood. The fucking economy was booming. And this guy that was from the South, could talk to Southern white men, but got along with black people, respected minorities, and I remember after the fucking Berlin Wall fell and all the Cold War was supposed to be over, knowing that the Russians were involved with the skinheads in Houston. So when I hear about a Chinese leaked document proving that the Clintons had a little bit of money from China in their Whitewater real estate investment corp thing, I think maybe not. As a Republican at the time, okay? Supported Bush Sr., but wasn't heartbroken over him, And when it came down to it, I really didn't give a fuck whether or not Dole or Clinton won. Because it was like, like the way people were getting just nasty about Clinton. Yeah, maybe better for the country to move on. But on the other hand, Clinton's been doing a good job. And Dole looked like a fucking stiff. But just like it didn't, fall on me as guaranteed acceptable fact when they started talking about, the Chinese. And we know this because of a leaked document. It never occurred to anyone that they might have leaked the document on behalf of the Communist Party because Bill Clinton's a good president or a presidential hopeful. I don't think you understand how these fucking people do business on a basic level. If there's a city or an area that they decide they want to influence, they will target individual, completely non-political businesses just because they're local and established. They will target everything from a publishing company to a newspaper to a radio station, a grocery store, a bread bakery. And we don't see how any of these things can matter. You don't see how, say, maybe let's take the least, just the craziest sounding one, I'm sure, the least innocuous sounding one, a bread bakery. Okay, say Boston or New Orleans or, some classic fucking city here in America. Has a long time, couple of families that have been running the bakeries for generations. Okay? Then this European Alpha Bank invested international bakery company, and by the way, I could actually give a specific example here, comes in and because of their international connections, they start putting these local bakery companies out of business. And the American investors and the American politicians who are getting lobbied to go along with it, they all think the Cold War's over. Just keep this in mind. They all think, fucking Russians want to put their money into something, let them. And we don't discuss things in context of the Cold War. We discuss things in context of, should there be a Walmart?
No.
Well, yeah, no.
Sorry.
No. Definite no. And when, detached politicians wind up making those fucking decisions, they wind up trying to think on the big numbers, results type economic indicator things, They want people's stocks to go up and shit like that. They're not worried about Bromart and Zapardos. They're not worried about fucking Boston Bread Company and whoever the fuck. They can get shown sets of data that are conducive to the decision that these lobbyists want them to make. And the compromising and negotiating tactics of these people can't be underestimated when you just go assuming that all politicians are getting bribed and that's why we have Walmart fucking taking over shit. There are insidiously clever ways to sell somebody a car that they don't need. Okay? Now, when it comes to the other little thing that just happened to pop up when we had this uniter-in-chief, this groovy saxophone-playing centrist named Bill Clinton. First we had a fucking document released by China that indicated that they were invested in one of the Clintons' real estate holdings. And then, remember, everybody thinks the Cold War is over. We had a little chubby girl named Monica Lewinsky. Alright, she's just a little fluffy. Voluptuous.
She's so fluffy.
Her name was Monica Lewinsky. Polish. But the Cold War is over. So there's no reason. You're not allowed to. It's completely unacceptable to even discuss whether she could be an intelligence agent. Oh, and it wasn't too. You could not even fucking say that. You would just get shouted out of the room. It's preposterous. She's just a good little Jewish girl from New York. Oh, Clinton was... Oh. She wasn't, possibly power hungry and ambitious. And, oh no, you'd have to actually listen to her phone conversations with Linda Tripp to understand that. She was a manipulative little ambitious cunt. Okay. And I am still not convinced that there were any lewd acts committed. Furthermore, in 2002, 3.5 years, if you look at the time of year, after the supposed blue dress just finally came out of the fucking woodwork, there's an interesting little buzz on the internet. A science lab in Russia, Kremlin-funded, has announced that they can replicate and simulate genetic material with someone's DNA. And I don't remember at the time thinking blue dress. But I should have. It took me a long time to put 2 and 2 together. So for all we know, considering the capabilities, first of all, let's just, get the obvious out of the way. Would a Kremlin-funded science lab release the existence of something immediately after it was conceived? Or would they put it into use while it was still secret? And then only when that enemy it was used against had been subdued would they declassify its existence. So, you got a document from China. You got a dress that doesn't show up until a year and a half after the investigation starts. And you got this new media. It was news before that. We had CNN. It was still news for a while, and it started to become media, but then we had Fox News. And once Fox News came out, man, it was media. And it's funny how they like to point the finger and call other people media, but when you point the finger, they are three pointing back at you. Media, from the beginning, was a country invented, deployed, settled, whatever, meant to divide from the center. The Midianites were a franchise of the Northern Horde, much the same way the Hittites were, or even the Scythians in the West. And what does media mean to this day? Middle. In Latin tongues, it literally translates to middle. And in English, we use it to describe a couple of different things. In averaging, we have mean, median, and mode. On our streets, we have the little thing in the middle, we call it the median.
Or if you're from New Orleans.
But when it comes to media...
From New Orleans, it's the neutral ground.
Yeah, if you're from New Orleans, it's the neutral ground. I was already saying that in the back of my head when I was talking about them. Don't say neutral ground. Don't say neutral ground.
Sorry.
But the only actual definition of media that is legitimate in the English language is a uniform substance intended for use in a chemical reaction. That's what media means. Let's say it together, class. Media is a uniform substance intended for use in a chemical reaction. Now, you have proper applications of this word, if you'd like me to use it in a sentence. The media on this Petri dish has expired. I have created a file format to utilize this new silicone-based media. My media drive is full. So I need to insert a blank CDR this, you know? I bought a computer that is multimedia enabled. Now then we have the transfer of the chemical reaction that occurs on the film being referred to as media, and tapes being referred to as media, to it describing digital media. Well, there we have a compound word that negates the first part of it, because there's no longer any sort of electrochemical reactions. It's just purely electrical. I mean, if you want to be technical, every time the computer does anything, it's still electrochemical, because what you're dealing with is a series of tubes. You're dealing with a series of elements that are refined to react to electricity. Transistors, microtransistors. And Carlos, that depends on whose Spanish you're using too, brother. Some Latin American countries would say medio, some would say media. Like I've heard it la media, where you're clearly saying el medio. The middle. And there's La Misha. Misha.
You complain, but you're purring.
You want to sit? So anyways, what was I just talking about? So, for some reason, during the same time frame, and this is literally the same time frame, from 95 to 97, in which multimedia became the keyword, you know, the hot word, the sell point of computer systems, of entertainment systems for your home, you know, multimedia, digital entertainment. We came to term at first sensationalist journalism as media. You know, like Wayne Gale, the media. Well, I'm on Tarantino quotes. And then people started referring to the ways you could get to the news. Television and paper and radio were news media. See how this evolved? It's pretty logical. It's pretty obvious how we got there. And it, you know, doesn't even point to a conspiracy. It doesn't even point to planning. But it's an interesting coincidence. How basically the first land from which deceivers were sent forth. Media. Now, because of a fucking file format, because we used a chemistry, a scientific term to apply to data storage, and then tried to promote based on buzzwords of the time, news as being a multimedia thing. Your newspaper, your radio, your TV, your internet. It's multimedia. It's news media. And now, these fucking retards, you spiritually irresponsible twits,
Twat waffles,
have referred to yourselves not as news media, like this YouTube channel is a news media, this TV channel is a news media, representing a news station. Now, it's a media outlet. As if it's just a fucking orifice, just shitting out media all over you. It's a media outlet. Don't forget to wipe. It's a media outlet with full release and a happy ending.
Must have Asian solution.
Yeah, especially if it's Asian media.
Oh, we don't have the ending for that one there.
But according to the first term, it's just nonsense. But even if you want to take the English language and its propensity to adapt one term to another application, media, it's supposed to apply to things like Tucker Carlson and Geraldo Rivera reports, Not fucking actual experts in their field discussing what the Constitution and the law says in an open-minded and objective way, not simply picking and choosing shit to suit their agenda the same way they teach their children the Bible. Excuse me.
There's fresh one made.
Oh, please. Ow! Oh! Ah. So anyways, Monica Lewinsky and Linda Tripp. Just two patriotic American girls, right? According to Fox News. And allegedly, according to the only other fucking news channel at the time, CNN. And what did you really have? You had CNN in the center, and you had Fox News on the right. And Fox News' position from day one was to be divisionary, claiming it was for marketing purposes, because after all, the Cold War was over. And how did they do this? By saying to to their viewers that you can't trust CNN because they're far-left liberals. Oh. To which I thought, have you ever really met a far-left liberal? Because they are not to be found on CNN. Well, in 2016 you could see a few of them. Most of them were in support of Bernie Sanders. Liberal news media would never have rallied behind the invasion of Iraq. Fucking please. Even to say, you know, while we don't support this, we support our troops. That is not what a liberal says. You've never really met a fucking liberal. But everything they wanted to do had to be against CNN. And they wanted you to know that they were the best because they weren't like the whining liberals on CNN, who were actually just like centrists. There was like retired generals and CIA people. And the only time CNN really gets annoying is when you get these political fucking analysts on there. Here we have a useless politician from this former White House to argue pointlessly with a useless politician from this former White House. None of these people made any consequential decisions or had any significant activities regarding any of these things that we're going to discuss. But they're all we have, so we're just going to make you listen to them for 20 fucking minutes. And I personally, I'm not vouching for CNN. I think what CNN has done for the longest time should not be described as liberal because that is inaccurate. What CNN has engaged in for a long, long time is called false equivalency. And it's much more dangerous. False equivalency, that is the only real other thing besides Russia that led to the election of Donald Trump. Those two things alone. And for any conservatives who thinks they support Russia because they know the truth, or they support Trump, yeah, same fucking thing. They support Trump because they know the truth.
Yeah, no shit.
You don't know shit about shit. Russia has pulled the wool so far over your eyes, you don't even know your ass from a hole in the ground.
Right.
That is what I've been trying to say all along, is that they have been controlling conservative information. They have been controlling, therefore, conservative thought and viewpoints. And now, Fancy Bear has been attacking centrist, anti-Trump, mostly conservative websites and organizations. Fancy that.
There was breaking news, by the way, related to Trump. Cohen accepted a plea deal.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Oh, you saw that? Okay, I didn't know if you'd seen
I was
that
going
or
to
not.
get to the breaking news here in a second, but yes,
Sorry.
that's very interesting.
Isn't it, though? And did you see the charges that he's accepting as part of the plea deal? Did you happen to catch those?
No, we're going to get to it. Trying to stay on
Sorry.
this particular subject here. Because we're actually talking about Hillary right now. Oh, but Hillary. Oh. Her and her fucking reset button with the word misspelled. Oh, we're going to get to that in just a second. But now that I've thrown all the shade of historical hindsight onto this guy named Ken Starr. That's who we've been talking about here, with Lewinsky and Whitewater. He followed the Clintons. How the fuck do you follow the Clintons? Like, you know, have you watched Star Trek? You know, like when the Admiral with the Vendetta, like, deploys himself out to the fields so he can go after Khan or whatever. I don't know. Fucking. This guy, Ken Starr, goes from Arkansas to D.C. to run the Clinton investigation. Again, only this time it's not about documents from China. It's about a little girl from Poland. And by little girl, I mean 22, a complete fucking adult, fully aware of her own goddamn decisions. But if you watch Fox News, you know, she was 12, right? If you watch Fox News, she was fresh out of high school. You know? They would be talking about Monica Lewinsky, and in the background they would have, I am 16, going on 17, I know that I'm naive. But you could trust Fox News because Rupert Murdoch was Australian. In a time at which, and the CIA should be able to archivally verify this for me, at a time at which it was already pretty much known that one of the easiest accents to acquire for media or news or television infiltration, mass info I think it was called, infiltration, was the Australian accent. So after we had the fucking Crocodile Dundee movies and you know, little mini documentaries on about the Australian accent, now we got Rupert Murdoch. And we can trust him because he's got an Australian accent. And nobody remembered the words of Christ that said, beware of those who say they are Jews and are not. Because he God bless the victims of the Holocaust and may they rest in peace. He was from Poland. Now, who else was just from Poland? Or from Canada? Was it from Canada? No, it was from Poland and Canada and Australia. And, okay. It's a known pattern of infiltration, okay? People going from Poland and the Ukraine and Belarus to Canada to learn how to be Americanized, or to Australia to learn how to be Americanized, okay? To take some form that America's considered to be innocuous, that can blend perfectly with our society. They go there to have children. When those children become adults, they come here and they have children. And then 20 years later, there is a standing army in our country controlling our information. Now, the other of the girls in this discussion. Howdy, James. Not James. Just saw the hi. The other of the girls in this discussion.
Amy?
That is, if she is a girl, baby. Linda Tripp. Laney, no ma'am.
She's not playing with it, she's just laying on top of it. As long as she's not trying
Not
to...
for you. Okay? My wife is crocheting.
Yes, I'm an old woman deep down.
Alright. So, speaking of old women deep down, Linda Tripp. She was old women deep down and upside her head and lopsided and inside out. And just, she was like an old man, too. Like, you know, you are what you eat. She clearly looked like some sort of cannibalistic ogre to me. Linda Tripp is a man, baby. Yeah.
Give him a string!
Good job. Good job. Now she knows it's a toy. She tiger lilied. Oh.
Get out of my yarn bag! Snuggle with the dog. What the hell's wrong with you?
The reason why I say tiger lily was skittish. Namely, because if you just moved your foot a little, on accident even, when she was walking by and she, like, you didn't notice her walking by, she would just jump up, just from the slightest move of a foot. Come here, you little shit. Nice kitten. Anyways. So, what we were told by Fox News and, you know, the media about Linda Tripp was, once again, she was a reason cited as why it would be silly to consider, why it's taboo at this point, less than 10 years later, to consider that this may be a Cold War psyop type thing. Okay? Because Linda Tripp was a loyal servant of the Pentagon. And could have in no way possibly been disloyal. Because she had a father who was in the Pentagon and she wanted to be like her father, blah, blah, blah. When actually, if you looked into it just a little bit, like, you know, the things that she said about her father, you find that she had great animosity towards the United States military for keeping her father from her.
Which is not entirely untrue.
Not uncommon either.
And not very uncommon, because military, especially military men, are just always gone. We have daddy issues.
Look at this cat. Where you going? Where you going, mommy? So anyways. Alright. Linda Tripp is a man, baby. Yeah. Okay, oh, sorry. I can't think of her without thinking of that. I apologize. Get a little more sugar in this coffee. Oh. You should get down. Down. Get down. No, don't sniff my coffee. Get down. And now, let me just say this. I hate to be judgmental, even though it's kind of my job. But just consider Linda Tripp on a basic level. What do your instincts tell you about her? Ask certain questions. Would she do this? Would she do that? Would she be susceptible to this? Would she be willing to put herself at minimal risk? Minimal risk. If properly propagandized by avenues of normal anti-American sentiment targeted at people who suffer from self-pity? Would she be willing to take several $100,000, possibly be guaranteed by a Russian-invested publisher or two a book deal? You got to consider the society of the time, how fortunes were made, how people wanted to get rich quick. And for a long time, writing a book had been the best way. And being one of those people who were there when something happened, oh, that was becoming the most profitable and easiest way to get there. So did there even need to be an actual bribe? Or just a promise of success? Basically, a bargain with the devil. Doesn't sound that far-fetched when you think about it. Because that's what a bargain with the devil essentially is. Here is the status quo we want maintained. If you will maintain it, you will prosper. And oh, the more, if you can implement the changes we desire. That's why there's only 2 and 3 people watching right now. That's why my Easy Reefers channel, formerly known as Lost-Begotten, is still making $9 a month. That's why I'm fucking broke and having to beg for supporters to send money. So I can keep doing this. Because when the shit hits the fan, I'm going to fucking one of these little car lots around here and I'm going to sell used cars. And I won't, I won't be considering that a success where our mutual interests are concerned. And for that reason only have I asked for y'all's support. And like I said, I'm constantly thinking of, like, what the fuck is the best way for me to actually have some kind of independent revenue stream here. And the only thing I can really think is just going and applying at a private intelligence firm. But if I get any good news on that front, y'all will be the first to know. It'll be subtle, but you'll know. So now, the Clinton murders, right? Or the Clinton murder, really? There's really only one where it all starts, and then everything else is just kind of like fucking fantasy land, alright? And the one where it starts is the Clinton family fucking lawyer, supposedly being killed because he knew too much? Really? That's your story? Knew too much about what? With his level of security clearance, which he did have a very high level security clearance, would it have been at that point what he knew about Russia's involvement with the situation? Would it be because he could corroborate alibis, maybe? Could it be because he had information that would defend the Clintons? And was killed by the enemies of the Clintons? No. It had to be. They killed their fucking family friend who went to their daughter's wedding. Or, no, not to their wedding, excuse me. I think he went to their daughter's wedding, too. Like just before he got killed. I'm not sure about that, though. I know he went to one of their fucking weddings. Can't remember which one it was, but anyway. He was a longtime family friend. One of their most trusted advisors. Why the fuck would they kill him? He seems like just the type of person you would want to know as much as possible. But you think the Clintons somehow had some kind of shady mafia connections to get him killed, but Trump is still letting Don McGahn walk around. You know? I mean, on the one hand, you have Trump, who has ties to the mafia and has had ties to the mafia for 30 fucking years. And on the other hand, you have the Clinton Foundation, which has ties to things like AIDS hospitals in Africa. Oh, scary. So, I suppose since I mentioned him, I'll go ahead and talk about Seth Rich again. Seth Rich was not a Bernie Sanders supporter, according to his parents. Period. End of story. If he was killed by the Russians. If he was killed either by the Russians or at random, like the fucking cops say. I think more than likely, It's just like the cops say, he was killed at random. I say that because I'm not arrogant. And as suspicious as I want to be, those people are the investigators. They knew what the fuck they were doing. They're professionals. I assume that they know more than me. They say it was some guy at random. Some guy at random. If they say we have reason to believe possibly blah blah blah, and we have reason to believe possibly blah blah blah, I'm still going to maintain skepticism of the limits of their capabilities as far as both whether they're legally allowed to implicate Russia or whether or not they were capable enough to detect why, at that time, Russia would want somebody in the Clinton campaign killed. Because at that time, in that area, most of those police officers were watching Fox News. And they had no idea that Russia was taking steps to neutralize the Democratic campaign. They were taking steps to neutralize the entire Hillary Clinton campaign. They were. And in that time frame is when Seth Rich got neutralized. And God rest his soul, he was killed for supporting the person that he thought would best unite this country. And that's why I supported Hillary Clinton. Not because of what was said about her, but if the truth about her could get out, then and only then could she unite this country. I acknowledge the difficulty about her. People reject the idea that she could unite this country because they've been propagandized. So what you need to do is deprogram people. And let it be a continual shaming of misbegotten judgment. How we continuously revisit and debunk the foundations of their beliefs. Because it's nonsense. Let's start with the reset button. Hillary Clinton colluding with the Russians because she had a reset button and wanted to reset relations with Russia. If you think so, you're a fucking idiot. And here's why. In the reality that existed at the time, you know, like that shit that you don't just get to make up as you go along, most people thought Russia was our ally, including all of the generals in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine. Well, maybe not so much the Navy, but Army, for sure, was convinced that Russia was our ally. We had strategic deployment plans that involved moving men and equipment through Russia, even paying our military. Our military was colluding with the Russians. Because our military paid for transport on Russian fucking trains, didn't they? Oh. This is a time period post 9/11 in which Russia was posing as an ally in the war on terrorism. A. And B, also very important to understand before you consider yourself anything but a fucking idiot when analyzing the situation, is that George W. Bush had pissed off the world. And while Russia was trying to woo the world and be the sympathetic voice, they had made the Bush administration out to be the aggressor. They had basically complained about, you know, the missile shield and all this other stuff, and that basically George W. Bush was trying to surround them and blah, blah, blah. Okay. All the same shit they've been complaining about. And the new Obama administration had a mandate to reset relations with the entire world. And to do so, we wanted to acknowledge Russia as the second most powerful country in the world militarily and influentially. And we wanted to do diplomatic due diligence. We did it in a really fucking silly way, in my opinion. But if you consider, the commercialism of the time, the reset button was kind of a thing like media. What was it? Who was the Office Depot? Reset button? Office Depot?
The easy button.
The easy button?
Staples had the easy button.
Yeah, the easy button.
Now we actually...
And Staples was an international shipper, and more than likely, many different countries had heard of Staples. Okay? And, it was a cliche thing. It was meant to be remembered. Something that everybody could understand. A symbolic gesture, if you will. I mean, even if they thought they had some kind of backdoor deal at that point. Oh, I'm sorry, YouTube. Did I make too much fucking sense against your little masters?
It was just found guilty in 5 counts of homicide.
Any fucking day now. They said stream, but you're singled out in the red.
Goes rain again.
Here, you got a little top off, please. Boom, 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 boom. So lay down. The thread is real. Inside. That's good. Masterfully done.
Make sure you turn the pot off.
I gave her a big lecture about how to carry this crappy pot of coffee so that I don't wind up getting a bunch of grounds from a top off. And well done, well done. I'm quite proud. Just right. Dingo! What? Are you fuzzy? Oh, I know. You're fuzzy, huh? Hey, Dad, I'm fuzzy. Did you know that? Yes, I know. You're fuzzy. Make sure you have some water, please. So lay down. Okay. Resisting the urge to get my guitar and tune down the E string. Resisting the urge. What the fuck were we talking about? Okay, we're talking about saturation and the reset button and the easy button and the button pops and the... Yeah, that's pretty much where we were. It was the easy button. And how not only was, the Cold War over and Russia pretending to be everybody's friend. Dingo, go lay down. But it was telling my dog to go lay down because they're interrupting the live stream. No. Dingo, go on. Fuck. Oh, I can mess with that camera. But then you had, the same reason why Obama went on his fucking apology tour, man. America was perceived at the time as having fucked up the world order. Excuse me. Fucked up the world order. We had taken for granted our position in it and gone too far after 9/11. And thinking Putin was our ally in the war on terrorism, thinking that the Cold War was over, thinking that we had, amends to make with the world. Republicans and Democrats, everybody who had money to invest that wasn't just, Cold War paranoid still after fucking 15 years. Nobody. In a time in which people were more likely to be afraid of their own government than the Russian government. Keep that in mind. Then you have the Uranium One deal. Now, this is something that was not signed by Hillary Clinton herself at all. It was not reviewed. The document's details, probably, were never even read by Hillary Clinton. I'm not trying to distance her from it. I'm just saying the facts are the facts. And the fact is that this deal was struck during the Bush administration. Again, during this time period in which we all thought, you've got a friend, and it's Russia. In fact, the only people that still knew that Russia was the enemy of the United States at that point were people like Donald Trump and the Ku Klux Klan. Because they had been having a plan for the day when a black man became president. And the Uranium One deal, speaking of uranium deals, thank God for reminding me of the thing that I didn't think I was going to remember. I just let it go before I started the broadcast. I try to load the things in my brain before I start the broadcast, and then I try to see what I can remember or can't remember. And as I was even trying to load the shit before I started typing the tags and everything, I was trying to remember this one detail. But all I can do is pray for it to come back to me. And it has. because it's related to uranium deals. In fact, probably involves fucking the same companies. Or at least one of the same companies. The Russian one. That was to buy up excess uranium. Uranium that could be re-refined into weapons-grade uranium, but uranium that was basically of the type that would be conducive to energy reactors. Okay? Now, this came after a time in which we had rearranged our weapons stockpiles to use hyperbaric detonations over nuclear detonations because of the reduced fallout. So on the one hand, it, seems like, why are we giving away a bunch of uranium to the Russians? Well, first of all, the ally in the war on terrorism at this point. The deal was struck under the Bush administration. Bush said he could see Putin's soul. Probably because he gave us whatever the hell the evidence was about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Putin is probably the one who guaranteed that Saddam was involved somehow. So, then you have the Iran nuclear deal. And they talk about it in a similar light. Only in this case, Obama actually did. Well, somewhat initiated. He joined in with the existing international group that was in support of the IAEA's plan for denuclearization of Iran under Mahmoud al-Baradi, the former chair of the IAEA. And they had basically a plan for the lesser of two evils. Do you want no inspections? Or do you want inspections? Because Iran doesn't have to. It's a fucking sovereign country. And if you want to make them do something, you need to talk to Russia. The what was it, the People's Revolution or whatever? Oh God, I can't remember the name. I've talked to a guy who was on the ground back then in the fucking 70s. Okay, those people came with the support of Russia. It was a communistic type revolutionary movement. Alright, and by guy on the ground, I mean a fucking spook who got out 2 weeks beforehand. And he is fucking terrified of those people. Okay? And, with good cause. Considering that without the rest of media, they're just a country called Iran. But with the rest of media, with the rest of the horde, they represent a resurgent Persian Empire. I wish them the best of luck. Because if they happen to take over the world from there, then I can challenge their leader to single combat as a son of a cod. That would be, just a nice, clean, easy way to solve things. But anyways, it's good to be in mud. What can I say? I'm a well-bred mutt. So, the thing about this Iran deal, the Russians, same company I think that was going to get our old uranium was going to get this uranium from Iran. In accordance with this international treaty, it wasn't just a bilateral agreement between U.S. and Iran. When we pull out of it, it doesn't just dissolve, it weakens it. And depending on how things go from there, it can dissolve, and I think it has. But just us pulling out of it doesn't arbitrarily dissolve it. Then it becomes up to fucking, Merkel and May, and Chirac, and whoever. And the Russians. Yay, Well, what's happened, actually, since Trump has gone and, just Obama did it, it's bad. Is he set up a wonderful situation for both the Iranians and the Russians. You see, before, we had some international lawsuits that Iran demanded be settled. Essentially, we had to pay on other books for their uranium to be sent to Russia. And had to basically, through Russia, through this company, fund it. Had to buy it. Okay. And I don't know what the logistics are as far as who made money off of that deal. But I know that the suitcase full of money that we sent to Iran was about these different fucking court cases that, according to international law, we still owed Iran this money. And that was kind of, we'll pay this account off, and then you're not, taking a loss for your uranium. Now that Trump has done away with the Iran deal, Russia has offered to sell that uranium back to Iran for a good price. So Russia gets to make money. Iran gets its fucking cake. And they both get to eat us too. You see what I did there? I used a pun. Cake for uranium. Why do they call it yellow cake when it's green? I mean, I know it sounds more delicious, but it's not really kind of the message you're trying to convey. I'm kidding. It's not actually great. Except most of the time. So, let's see what we got here. Back to the notes. We're kind of doing this from memory. That's the Uranium 1 deal. Nunberg. Sam Nunberg on TV the other day, quote, "There was a time when the Clintons liked the Russians." Yeah. It's called Before They Took Crimea. Before they revealed themselves to be, oh yeah, by the way, we don't give a fuck about you. We never really have. To be our enemy. The Clintons, we all did. Everybody. You know, Russians are okay by me. They make good YouTube videos. We like to watch them try to drive. Although now, you know, precarious situations have yielded good results because they've come out with some good fucking race car drivers. Respect. If only they would declare independence from the, you know, horde. Instead of being their good little white puppets. But that would involve a European-like separation of many different regions. There are tens of millions of people in Russia who look Arabic and speak Russian. There are tens of millions of people who look Asian and speak Russian. It's not the savior of the white race, that's for sure. Anyways. I just think that if you want to win an argument with somebody, you have to talk to them from their perspective. The reason why the MSNBC people of the world aren't gaining any ground with the Trump base is because they don't take my advice. Largely because Russia has made it very easy for them to not have my advice available. Not even be able to have an opportunity to click on my advice. Okay. So let's see here. Then you come to the most collusive thing of all. I don't know if this is the last one on the list. But certainly, if there was any one thing that actually sounded like the Hillary Clinton campaign was involved with any Russians at all, it's the Fusion GPS thing. Now, when you take all of these other things and bullshit about them, and lie about them, and deceive the people that are listening to you, then and only then, you can make Fusion GPS sound shady in context. Because, you know, again, they wanted Trump to win because they hated Hillary Clinton so much, but they were colluding with the Clinton campaign. Right? Because of Fusion GPS, right? If you just speak sense to yourself for 5 fucking seconds, you come up with a much more logical answer. That's if you need to know something that's going on in Russia. Who do you need to hire to find out? Some fucking Russians, don't you? Right? How would you expect a company to produce results if they didn't have people on the inside? How would you expect a company not to be just completely blocked from any ability to investigate unless it had massive Russian investments? Do you think there's companies without massive Russian investments that are allowed to just investigate the fucking Russians? Just go snooping around? They barely even let their own fucking news companies do that. So the only way for anyone in the Democratic campaign to expect to get credible results, other than waiting for the fucking FBI, other than waiting for the FBI, which seemed, less interested in warning the American public about the attack on them, and more worried about Hillary Clinton's emails. Again, one of the things that the news people and the media, or whatever you want to call them, are completely failing on at this point. The reason why the Republican base is holding strong, the reason why you're not gaining any ground, the reason why you're not actually uniting this country, is because you're not telling the truth about what happened here in its entirety. You spent too much time talking about the DNC server and not enough time talking about psychological warfare. The psychological warfare that persists to this day as we speak. The psychological warfare that shows itself as the so-called new viewers every couple of weeks or so. The psychological warfare enabled through their co-invested companies, like Facebook and Twitter, which somehow, because of major news companies' failures, because of intelligence agencies' failures, because of Microsoft's failures, because they don't have me advising them, these two companies, with their massive shady behavior and Russian investments, are the only two fucking media companies of any consequences right now. Of any consequence. Right now. Think about that. What is there besides Facebook and Twitter? Let's see here. We can just look right here. Right here. It says it right here. You have Facebook, Twitter, and then Google Plus, which nobody fucking sees anything on, right? Never heard of that. Reddit, if you just, want to be trolled. And then Tumblr, Pinterest, that's still around. And oh look, all these things were in English, and then the first thing in a foreign language is in Russian. I don't know how to read Russian, so that looks like bukkake. LinkedIn. Oh look. And then Stumble Upon, which I know from my IT experience to be directly linked to Fancy Bear. You want to stumble upon the Fancy Bear virus, just download something from fucking Stumble Upon. Good God. Literally, when I see the word stumble upon, I complete the sentence with a virus. Whew. And let me tell you this. Fancy Bear has been around for 20 years. Possibly more, because another thing they're tied to, if you want to know just how low your defenses were, just how unvigilant we have become, Bear Share. And in fact, LinkedIn used to be a part of this problem. Because like I said, if you can keep a local business from being successful, a bakery, and have a big international baking company take over, you put yourself in a powerful position. Not only have you weakened that economy, not only when the microcosms add up, business by business, do you gain tremendous sway not only over the individual and over the thought and over the economic feel of the area, but directly over that country's economy, over that area's economy. And then, worst comes to worst, a time of war. There's always somebody nearby to poison the well. Or the stream. Of course, the world's biggest example of this has been Google. Not just versus Microsoft. Although that's all that's left, isn't there? But it used to be Google versus Yahoo, AOL, Netscape. Remember Netscape? Oh. I hate Netscape, but I hated Netscape, but still, you had yourself some fucking alternative. You see, there's great risk in consolidation. And you don't need to be making bread for your population to be poisoned. You know, we're long past the time of granaries. Although I like to think we still live in that time, but that's just me. We've allowed most of our phones to be made by one of the shadiest fucking companies of all times, that has used coercive practices, has used unfair algorithmic suppression and advantagizing, or whatever, promotion, to manipulate the American public and to manipulate the flow of capitalism itself. You've got your Android phones and you got your iPhones. And only a small percentage of usually wealthier people have iPhones. Until they came out with this lovely iPhone SE, which I adore. I still miss my fucking keyboard phone though, so yeah. As soon as I see a nice BlackBerry or something like that, I'm jumping on it. I usually wait until the phones go on clearance and they're giving them away, or they're like $40 or something, you know? Yeah, sure, you can bill me $2 a month for that. But at this moment, I'm the only one in the house without a cracked screen. Which means, you know, I'm going to wind up getting a phone eventually, and then I'll give my wife the iPhone. But I would really like for Microsoft just to get its shit together and come out with a true choice of devices. One that does everything and one that does very little. And I think they should even promote the base model device as being something designed for business security deployment. Something that you can give to all your peons so that they can communicate with your corporate mothership without the communications being intercepted or prevented from happening altogether. You'd be surprised how willing people would be as far as limiting the countries in which they can access so that they don't have access to them. Like, I used to be able to not see posts from people in select countries. Used to be able to, on here, not have my shit seen by people from select countries. You just can't do that anymore. I mean, you know, I'd prefer to just be speaking within my own community. I think the idea that American citizens have been forced to answer to trolling cannot be understated as a psychological warfare tactic. When you think about it, we've been allowing foreigners who are attacking this country, okay, to get us flagged and banned and our accounts locked and shit like that, when they shouldn't even be able to fucking see what we're posting. We should at least have the choice to not have people from fucking Greece and Romania and Saudi Arabia seeing our shit. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that, especially when you consider the number one cost of technology infrastructure and as it relates to traffic. It's about data flow. And the more countries you have blocked from viewing your data, the more the flow is improved. So it's a simple cost-cutting measure. But if you want to make yourself a voluntary platform for foreign influence campaigns, if you're going to do something like embed with the fucking Trump campaign and just have limited involvement with the Clinton campaign, which Facebook did, you know, that place where everybody went to get all the information that led them to believe that Trump and Clinton were, you know, just the choice between the lesser of two evils. Yeah, Facebook. It's probably where you first heard that quote, lesser of two evils. Oh, it took many forms of many means. They have made it impossible for American citizens to be politically active without having Russians get involved. And to this day, as long as you're a supposedly legitimate Russian citizen, you're allowed to harass me for talking about fish tanks. In fact, they made, did you know this? Just, you know, you want to talk about bakeries? How innocuous that sounds? There are at least 3 saltwater fish groups on Facebook that suddenly had, like, paid to promote status, okay, getting fucking 30,000 members and shit like that, right? Since 2015, 2016. And just in the past 2 years, just these fucking groups have shown up. And you cannot, oh, I cannot, for some reason, just post about innocuous fish tank stuff without people fucking ganging up on me in there. Just for giving, like, fish advice. And when they gang up on me, they're quoting crap they read on the internet that's not even close to being right. But they read it on the internet, so it's true, you know? And this only happens in these fucking new groups with their giant fucking subscriber bases or whatever. It's a bakery. It's a Walmart. Anyways, sorry about that. I got a weird little fucking thing on my hand. Just trying to figure out what the hell it is. Anyways, so it's fascinating to me how easy it would be, considering the numbers. Okay, I mean, fucking look at these things not by like whether they're anecdotally likely, whether or not they're anecdotally comfortable to think about, whether they're taboo, whether or not you'd be crazy to consider it. You must consider these things as your enemy does, by the numbers. That's why I'm here. Because if unleashed, I would win this war by the numbers. When you consider the percentage of economic influence, when you consider the percentage of environmental impact that saltwater reef hobbyists have. When it comes to people supporting about, making news about, or telling stories about, reporting on river pollution, ocean pollution, red tides, the Great Barrier Reef, coral bleaching. The number one people that are going to be in support of that kind of stuff, and trying to speak sense to anyone who would have anything negative to say about it, any skeptics who say that the environment dying because we're poisoning it is fake news. Things die when you poison them, dearies. We're poisoning it, it's going to die. And the most likely people to have any real-world experience without a fucking PhD behind their name, the most likely people to be going to their church and be, wait a minute, no. I've been keeping saltwater aquariums for 20 years, and this is what's happening right there. It's science fact, I know this chemically. Think about the numbers there. Anything above 0.8% is worth acting on. You're looking at about 1.6% right there. But by the numbers, combined with other activities, consider the cost. Is the 1.6% on influence on environmental discussions worth 0.000003% of your intelligence budget? Or just the budget regarding influencing America? Because we're talking about pennies.
It might have, because I look
And they can get people into one group or another based on one interest or another. And that 1.6% applying to whatever the fuck.
Okay,
Tree climbing, you know? Different interest here and there. Hiking. Things that relate to nature and understanding the environment. Stuff like that. Tourism.
okay.
Disabling it, suppressing it, influence it. making it stress people out to even talk about it.
Alright, she'll be over just a minute.
Suddenly, for a couple $100,000, you have increased your influence on the direction of politics regarding the economy by 20%. By the numbers. When you consider something has only a small insignificant impact, you've got to come up with a number for that. You've got to come up with an insignificant number. And then you have to consider all of the other insignificant impacts. And then, guess what? You're going to wind up with a significant number. Now, I'm not under the illusion that if my channel pops up on search results to people who have been subscribed to InfoWars for 20 years, like it should have already done, I'm not under the impression that 15% of those people will come and say, "Wow, I never thought of that. That has to be the truth." I'm not under the impression that 10%, 20%, 5%, 4%. I don't need to be any more than 3% effective. To save the fucking world. By the numbers. That's how close we are to being able to do this. That's how much an influence on the margins can create ripples that start waves throughout the entire conversation. Because even the people who see me and think I'm fucking crazy will enjoy saying, even the fucking crazy guy on YouTube who thinks he's Jesus is smarter than that. And then my influence goes from 3% to the entire Trump base. Because what those people will do, even in rejection of me, is hit the Bible. You see, whether or not they're programmed to agree with me, the reason why I'm suppressed right now is because I'm speaking their language. And reject me or not, my truth speaks for itself. That is what makes me who I am. And you cannot understand anything that I've taught without going into the Bible and seeing that it is a truth above all others. Now, there's two ways for the future to unfold. There's one in which that happens and faith is renewed. Then there's another in which faith is eventually destroyed, and Trumpism becomes the last echo of what is known as a bastard of a faith called Christianity. Because guess what? Right now, you've got Trump and the Catholics. And frankly, I'm not a fan of either one. And if the Catholics want to redeem themselves, oh, it's quite simple. They just simply need to acknowledge that I'm the lawful owner of all their real estate. I'll be sure to put it to good use. Much better than they've been doing. But if the Trumpists want my help, I'm afraid there is no legalistic argument that can be made in your ancient documents for me to assert myself. There's only the prophecies in this book, which I have fulfilled. And every aspect about that book that you do not understand, which I have revealed to you already. But deliciously, there's still more to come. You know, it's a real tragedy. The inefficient use of data storage that has been allocated to bullshit. There are so much electronic noise out there that if you Google for the truth about something, all you will find are the same old fucking lies. And it seems that something as simple as the word rib not belonging where it is shouldn't be allowed to cause anyone to die. Yet, how many deaths have been caused in the name of chauvinism? How many honored killings? How many witches burned? All because of the extensive mischaracterizations of women in general, because of a mistranslated word, an intentionally, obviously intentionally mistranslated word. And you cannot find anything on the internet, or really even in books, so much. Not one thing I've found, and feel free to look. I'd like to know if anybody's even discussed the possibilities that are so obviously the truth. People don't even discuss this as a possibility, even though it is the obvious truth. The Da Vinci Code fanatics, there's a possibility there that nobody even talks about as a possibility, but it's the obvious truth. The side, not the rib, the side of the man. You see, what pisses me off about apocryphal texts and all these different little abridged versions of the Bible posing as unique works is that, as corrupt as this is, as I've said, there is power in this book. It is a living tome. And what makes it a living tome is that people risk their lives to insert truth in there. truth that has not been revealed by your oppressors to this day. And it's not just things like verses of text that indicate there's something going on here other than a literal tale, but those things that these apocryphists completely fail to understand, which are there for a reason. They've taken them out because they don't understand them, but they were put in there because they don't understand them. Now what you have is the description of a secret time that can be found, alluded to in recurrence in that mystery Hindu text that I have not yet found again. Remember with the old black guy that's actually like a god, and like he first has 2 arms and then he has 4. I think it's a tale of Krishna, I'm not sure. But I remember at that time, when that happened to me, when I finally passed his test, that I could remember him. Who he was, why he was. And the brief time that we had before there was anything else. Ooh, and now, something else is occurring to me. Oh, it's that blocked thing. It's that consequence of consequences. Fuck, almost had it. What timing? I'm streaming, the wife is driving. Yes. So. Oh, well now you have a notification that I'm streaming. Alright, let me go before I forget what the hell I was talking about. Bye. What ominous fucking time for that song to play, though. There must be some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief. This form. This God before time. Oh, I'm picturing an old sand drawing I made. And it's like I have to remember the sand drawing, but I can't remember the lesson. I have to remember, This is what it's like to be a crazy person. So let me just play this out hypothetically. Don't take any of this as canon. Or fodder, for that matter. At that point, he was a she. Oh. Okay, still hypothetically, but it does make sense. And that would end the absolutionist nature of things. The Holy Spirit. Considered to be the goddess, right? If she with Gabriel as the husk, before she became the husk without, he was the husk within and she was the husk without of that. She the goddess, the sun, or the moon. Created man. And the reason why I say it makes sense is because it says that the Lord God, or Lilith, breathed life into man. So then on the husk within, or heaven, not the husk without, or the outer presence of God, and that is the unified goddess, the two goddesses is one, and the Father. That's where you have the dualistic telling. You have one where the Lord creates the serpent after he breathes life into man and places him in the garden. And then you have one where just God creates man and woman, male and female. But what shook me there was the idea that the Lord had created the serpent. And the serpent was supposed to be with Lilith, right? So is that implying in that text that the Lord was Lilith? Because frankly, none of the stories about Lilith make any fucking sense to me. It all seems to be the way a spoiled child would turn his parents against each other. You know, I have a certain spoiled child in mind. Not that one. Oh. But okay, the whole point that I was trying to get to in the unseen esoterics of Genesis that, isn't evidentiary or conducive or anything, but it's at least consistent with this, is the passage before God dividing Adam or the man, right? There's an interesting way the nomenclature lines up, but I don't feel like going into it and saying I don't have time for that shit. But what comes immediately before that is this passage about he sees the man is lonely and says that we should provide a helpmeet for him. Okay. Could be implying that there was a god and goddess and that they created, because it says we, right? That they created Adam and that they saw that he was lonely. But what's missing there is an indication that Adam went from a godlike state of some sort, being a created offspring, as opposed to a born offspring, and that when he was divided, he became fully human. Now, I think the clearest indication of that is right there in the space between that nobody really fucking understands. Why the author at that point, between him being lonely and them providing a helpmeet for him, and him actually getting that helpmeet, before he, casts or causes a sleep to fall upon Adam, right? Wondering what I'm doing. I'm peeling the sticker off my lighter. Just gotta fidget with something, otherwise I can't keep my train of thought. Before he caused a sleep to fall over Adam, a deep sleep to fall over Adam, right? He'd done so basically after giving up what seemed to be his initial tactic in solving this problem. And because it is placed in context as the initial tactic of solving this problem, we can know that the text there has something to do with a way to address this problem or solve this problem in some way. And in knowing that, we can clearly figure out that the translation we have is inadequate. This is the time in which Adam, God says he's lonely, and then he meets his wife. In between that and then, he names all the animals. If you take that on face value, it's actually kind of creepy. Was that implying that the original purpose of mankind was to partake in bestiality? That's kind of what it says, if you think that's correct. But then again, it says rib, so we know it's not correct. So what's the word for name? What is the original word for name? What does it imply in context? Well, to name something is to be it. Because we're talking about the earliest parts of Genesis, aren't we? In which foundational concepts were forged as souls. So that to name something was to experience what it was like to be it. This is that, and it is called that for that reason. And Adam, if he was in a godlike state, which clearly this passage in its entire context implies, where do you draw the line between him observing an animal and deciding to magically incarnate himself as that animal, or psychically connecting with that animal and living as one with it until he understood it and could name it? What's the difference? What is reality, you know? What is reality at that point? It seems pretty much unwritten, considering that the fucker's naming the animals for the first time, you know? This, to me, implies that, you know, the same way we humans this day teach about the birds and the bees. That was kind of like the first story of the birds and the bees. But how does a god teach another god, its child, about the birds and the bees? Oh, here, I'm going to let you be a bee for a little while, then I'm going to let you be a bird for a little while. Then you're going to move up to
Educated fleas.
Educated fleas.
Birds do it. Bees do it. Even educated fleas do it.
All right. Settle. And eventually I'll let you be a rabbit, and then you can see what I'm doing. Bing. No wait, that was Ricky D. Well, first you got to be a ferret, apparently. Then you got to be a rabbit. I don't know.
A little bit.
Anyways, give me just 1 second. I'm gonna put a song on for y'all, then we'll get back to it.
I know it's coming so soon. back, get back, get back, get back. I know you coming through. You're trying. Oh, you're trying to get me. You're trying too hard. I'm going, baby. I'm going too far. I want something better than this. Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right. So we're back, and nobody stayed for the song. We've been on for 2 hours and 45 minutes at this point, so that's quite understandable. You know, considering that only 5 people are ever allowed to join the broadcast.
Right. 6 if you count me when I'm sitting next to you on the couch.
Yeah, sometimes. But anyways, so we've got some new stuff that has happened today.
Manafort's guilty, Manafort is guilty. Cohen reached a plea deal, Cohen reached a plea deal. Donald Trump is fucked, Donald Trump is fucked.
Michael Cohen plea shows in essence that Trump was a co-conspirator with Cohen.
So,
Michael Cohen to pay very serious price, U.S. attorney says.
But however, so this is the U.S. attorney that he did this plea deal with. He has the opportunity to decide to cooperate with Mueller, and Mueller can talk to getting his sentence, whatever he gets sentenced for with this, down a little bit if he agrees to cooperate in the federal investigation.
So, and what happened with Manafort exactly?
The jury's been out for like 4 days now on
Right.
his trial, and 8 of the 18 charges that were levied against him the jury has come back and given a response to the 8 of the 18, and he's been found guilty. I think it was like 5 counts of tax fraud and 3 counts of something else. But there were 18. He had 18 separate charges against him.
Manafort conviction, quote, sweeping victory for prosecutors. Says Trump, Cohen says Trump directed him to what? Directed him. What, to plead guilty?
Summer's #1
Alright.
drama is
So we're about to put on a clip from CNN.
Oh, a mistrial was declared for the other 10 charges against Manafort.
Huh.
Convicted. 5 counts of felony tax fraud, 1 count of failing to file a foreign bank account, and 2 more counts of bank fraud.
Very interesting. Alright, let's try this again, shall we? Pardon the noise that's about to happen. Oh, there we go. So, back that thing up.
We have some breaking news. Michael Cohen in New York is like a Saturday Night Live skit where the president's former fixer is entering a guilty plea. I'm joined now by CNN's Kara Scannell, who was inside the courtroom. Kara, tell us about the plea.
Well, Jake, I mean, it's a pretty intense scene inside there. Michael Cohen is addressing the court right now. He just walked through how he committed 8 counts, including tax evasion on his personal income taxes, giving a false statement to a bank, and then critically, he just described how he violated campaign finance laws 2 ways, both involving, one of those involving the Karen McDougal payment, and the other one the Stormy Daniels payment. Now, he did not identify either woman by name, but it was clear from the evidence, the $150,000 payment and the $130,000 payment. Now, specifically, when asked by the judge to describe the crime,
You know, doesn't matter if humans hear my closing arguments. It seems the universe has.
Michael Cohen said, in coordination and at the direction of the candidate for federal office, he had made these payments. So he is implicating Donald Trump in this, although...
That was lag, not a pause. It just paused for me to make my thought. That was a pause. Now I'm unpausing it.
Not specifically
I'm on a
by name.
horse.
So we just heard that. I ran out of the courtroom. Michael Cohen is still answering questions by the judge who is running through the process here, informing him of his rights. And we also learned that as part of this agreement, he's agreed to prison term, although the judge is not bound by this, but of between just under 4 years and 5 years in prison. But the judge will sentence him later at a future date, so this could change, but that is the agreement between the prosecutor's office and Michael Cohen and his attorneys, Jake.
So that means they're expecting much more cooperation from him.
All right, well, that's stunning news,
Like I
Kara.
said,
Let me ask you. I mean, just first of all,
if he decides to talk to Mueller, Mueller could make that go a lot
Right,
less
exactly.
than that.
That's why they're going to delay sentencing until they indict Trump, which should be right around the corner.
Yay.
They basically have no choice but to either indict or submit articles of impeachment at this point. It has been legally established.
Line, you said that when Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to campaign finance laws violations, he was referring to Stormy Daniels, and he said he did it, quote, in coordination with and at the direction of a candidate for federal office, which specifically could only be President Trump. That is stunning news. You said something else about a different campaign finance charge before that. Can you repeat that?
Well, one of those also had to do with the payment that was
God,
made to
what is
Karen
happening to her
McDougal.
face?
He said that he had worked with the media company, which we know is American Media, the publisher of the National Enquirer, to craft this deal. And he, again, in that payment also mentioned at the direction and with coordination of the candidate for office, who could only be Donald Trump. So both of those, the Karen McDougal one, he did also mention the media company.
Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to campaign finance laws violations. He was referring to Stormy Daniels, and he said he did it, quote, in coordination with and at the direction of a candidate for federal office, which specifically could only be President Trump. That is stunning news. You said something else about a different campaign finance charge before that. Can you repeat that?
Well, one of those also had to do with the payment that was made to Karen McDougal. He said that he
Okay.
had worked with the media
There's a little bit
company,
down
which we
by
know
her
is American
arm.
Media, the publisher of the National Enquirer, to craft this deal.
I was thinking
And
it was
again,
really weird
in
that it's
payment
just showing
also
up on her
mentioned
face.
at the direction and with coordination of the candidate for office, who could only be Donald Trump. So both of those, the Karen McDougal one, he did also mention the media
Oh,
company.
let me see that again now. No, there's no reason to put a cut at the arm.
Said that he had worked with the media company, which we know is
Really?
office, which specifically could only be President Trump. That is stunning news. You said something else about a different
I just want to see what the other face
finance
looks
charge
like.
before that. Can you repeat that?
well, one of those also had to do with the payment that was made to Karen McDougal. He said that
Okay, I'm fucking getting the timing right, and it's just not letting me get on the
he
alternate frame.
had worked with the media company, which we know is American Media, the
It's
publisher of
just
the National
artifacting.
Enquirer,
Whatever.
to craft this deal. And he again in that payment also mentioned at the direction and with coordination of the candidate for office, who could only be Donald Trump. So both of those, the Karen McDougal one, he did also mention the media company, although they have not been charged with anything. Neither has, of course, the president. But in both instances, the first one having to do with Karen McDougal, he said in coordination and at the direction of candidate Trump and with American Media. And then the second Stormy Daniels payment, he said also again in coordination and at the direction of President Trump, who is then the candidate, Jake.
All right, Karis, now that's stunning news. Let me bring in Preet Bharara, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. What does this mean for President Trump? You have his former campaign fixer pleading guilty to campaign finance laws and saying
Means
that
he should
did
resign
so
and hope
in
Pence pardons his
coordination
ass.
with and at the direction of President Trump. And both of these are hush money payments, one to a former Playboy Playmate of the Year, the other one to a porn star and director. What does that mean for President Trump?
That's extraordinary and stunning, as you just said. I didn't expect it to be quite as vocal and direct and
Right.
clear as what Kara just described.
Right, I didn't
I think
expect
it's
that
terrible
either.
news for President Trump. I'm not surprised, given that allocution developed in federal court, that there's not a cooperation agreement. But it may be that they have what they need, and the information will be provided, obviously, to the special counsel, and will be in whatever report he prepares for the Deputy Attorney General and for further distribution to Congress. But I agree that is a big deal. You don't hear that kind of thing, with that kind of specificity about someone in that seat of power during a guilty plea allocution, which, by the way, is done under oath. So all the things that he said and allow the judge to accept the guilty plea in federal court is done under oath.
And is there legal exposure for President Trump, or Justice Department guidelines are a sitting president cannot be indicted, and that's the end of that?
Well, there's something called impeachment if there's evidence of a crime, and in particular, as the Constitution provides, high crime or misdemeanor. Again, I want to caution folks, I didn't attend the hearing. I don't know all the details. I don't know everything that was said. But based on what was just described, it sounded like Michael Cohen was directly implicating his former boss, his client, the president, in the federal crime.
Let me bring in Jeffrey Toobin, our senior legal correspondent. Jeffrey, campaign finance violations, Rudy Giuliani poo-pooed them a few months ago, saying it's just generally a small fine, not that big a deal. Obviously, other people have been sentenced to jail for campaign finance violations. It depends on the individual case. It depends on the individual judge. What's your reaction to this news?
Jake, this is news of immense significance. Here you have a now convicted felon, Michael Cohen, an admitted felon, saying that his co-conspirator and or his aider and abettor was the President of the United States. I mean, that is something that is, I think, basically without precedent in American history. I don't even think that happened during Watergate, that someone pled guilty and said the sitting president was a co-conspirator. Now, it is true that there are Justice Department guidelines that say a president cannot be indicted. That is that is something that Robert Mueller has certainly apparently agreed to follow. But this crime could be prosecuted after Donald Trump leaves office. This crime could be referred to Congress as a high crime and misdemeanor. But the fact that we have a admitted felon saying that the sitting president of the United States was his co-conspirator in this felony is a pretty extraordinary piece of news.
Since a sitting president cannot be indicted, at least according to Justice Department guidelines, this does become, as Jeffrey and Preet suggested, a political matter, which would mean that the current Congress or the next Congress, which may in fact be a Democratic House, we don't know, perhaps even a Democratic Senate, though I doubt it, that it becomes a political discussion. If President Trump broke finance laws, campaign finance laws, in having hush money paid in one form or another to Karen McDougal, a former Playboy playmate, and Stormy Daniels, a former porn star, what does that mean?
Well, it means that the president clearly worked to suppress information from voters before the election. But more broadly, you have one of his closest allies, Michael Cohen, saying the president directed me to lie, to cover up a secret that he wanted to keep, and I committed crimes along the way. Given the way that this White House has conducted itself, you may see that narrative play out again.
Jake, what we heard today is that what we know today is that when the president hired criminals include right now Michael Cohen, they include Paul Manafort. We don't know if those criminals also include Michael Flynn and who else down the line. This does in fact become a
pleaded guilty,
and pleaded guilty, so and we don't know who else. The White House has been very resistant to answering key questions on this. I do not think we were going to get truth from this White House, truth from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and so the question becomes, what is Congress going to do? Where does Congress stand on this? I do not see an appetite from the Republican Congress, particularly
I don't have an appetite to hear your dumb ass. You see, you can't understand politics or make any kind of political analysis or prediction without imagining the future campaign ads. Donald Trump's indicted co-conspirator. Felony co-conspirator. They would not impeach the felony co-conspirator. Oh, I think you'd be surprised how even a referral, even if Mueller is going to, at this point, at this unprecedented point, still stick to this easily obstructed anti-rule of law path that people seem to think he's restricted to it. Once that actual indictment for high crimes, felonies, not just misdemeanors, you'd be surprised how many Republicans walk right over to the Democratic side and say, about that whole impeachment thing, you got my vote, because I'd like to keep my damn seat. And they're going to be doing all kinds of backdoor negotiation. Saying, you know, just don't challenge me, and I'm on your side now. Trying to limit the number of primaries, trying to limit the number of contested seats.
And we have some more breaking news. I'm
And
going to
then
bring
on
in
the
Jessica
same
Schneider
day-
at the courthouse. The judge has made a ruling in the case of the United States of America versus Paul Manafort. Jessica?
That's exactly right, Jake. The judge declaring a mistrial as to 10 of the counts. These are 10 counts that the jury could not come to a unanimous consensus on. You know, this is all happening very quickly here. The last word we got is that the judge was going to be talking to these jurors individually, but we understand the jurors are in fact inside the courtroom. The judge has been talking to them, but in the meantime, the judge has now decided a mistrial will be declared as to those 10 counts where the jury could not reach a consensus. So this,
No,
in
that
a
was the
sense,
Russian.
is
She
a
already knew
victory
the
for the
verdict
defense
10 minutes
team
ago.
here. They were hoping for this hung jury, and now they have it with at least 10 of these counts. Now, of course, we have those other 8 counts. There were 18 counts total. So for those other 8 counts, Judge Ellis has indicated here he will be reading the verdict
Yes, and
for
Jessica,
those 8 counts.
if I can interrupt for just 1 second, I'm being told that Manafort has been found guilty of at least one of the counts. I suppose he's reading them out in the courthouse right now. So if he's guilty of one of the counts, I don't know what that means as for the other 7. Let me bring in Evan Perez. What's going on?
That's right, Jake. Right now the judge is going through the verdict.
What happened there was one reporter didn't have the shit up to date, so he had to cut to a different reporter, politely.
What happened was...
From the jury, and basically what we know right now is that Paul Manafort has been found guilty of at least one count. Now we don't know exactly what the details are that's happening right now in the courthouse behind me. Right now you can actually hear some people a crowd here out in the square in front of the courthouse reacting with cheers. So they're hearing the news as well that Paul Manafort has now been found guilty of at least...
Hold up. This guy here. Come on, fucking YouTube, just making everything harder to do now.
I don't know what that
Fucking bad
means
news
for
is
the
coming
other
out.
7. Let me bring in Evan Perez. What's going on?
That's right, Jake. Right now the judge is going through the verdict from the jury, and basically what we know right now is that Paul Manafort has been found guilty of at least one count. Now we don't know exactly what the details are that's happening right now.
Guilty.
In the courthouse behind me. Right now you can actually hear some people a crowd here out in the square in front of the courthouse reacting with cheers. So they're hearing the news as well that Paul Manafort has now been found guilty of at least one of these 18 charges that he was facing. Now we are still waiting for the details of which count this is, but what we heard, as Jessica pointed out just a few minutes ago, was that the jury had agreed a unanimous verdict on 8 counts, and they were deadlocked on 10. So right now we're waiting to hear the details of which charges he was found guilty on and which ones they were deadlocked on, Jake.
And what's going on right now for viewers at home is the judge is reading each one of the verdicts, and that's not just a matter of bang, 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 bang. We have to go through what all the charges are and then say what the jury has concluded. So one of the 18 counts, Paul Manafort has been found guilty.
They're just running in and out of there, man.
Now I'm being told right now
waiting for
that
2 of them to
the jury
collide.
has found Paul Manafort guilty of 8 of the 18 counts. The other 10, there has been a mistrial declared. Let me go to Jessica Schneider with this breaking news. Paul Manafort found guilty of 8 counts.
Guilty on 8 of those counts, 10 of those counts sort of wiped away, for lack of a better term, because the judge has declared a mistrial. The jury couldn't come to a consensus on those 10 counts. And, you know, I want to explain for viewers here a little bit of the reason for the delay. There are no cameras, there are no phones allowed inside the court at all. So what we're relying on are people who are running from the courtroom down to our people who have computers, and they're able to talk to us via landline and computer. So that's the reason why we're not in there with our cell phones. So yes, the judge has announced that this jury found Paul Manafort guilty on 8 counts, and there's been a mistrial declared in 10. So we're still waiting to get a bit more information here as it comes out. We did hear some cheers outside the courthouse, as Evan mentioned. So not good for the defense on those 8 counts, but, you know, a little bit of hope as to the 10 counts that have been declared as a mistrial here. But again, considerable jail time Paul Manafort is facing. Remember, if he had been convicted on all 18 counts, he faced 305 years in prison. A lot of these counts are up to 30 years in prison.
Just
So
got
this is
your
by no
number.
means a win
He
for
don't
Paul
wanna
Manafort. He has been
call
found
nobody,
guilty on
yeah.
8 of these counts. Jake?
All right, so just to take a step back, we started the show in Manhattan. President Trump's former fixer and longtime personal attorney Michael Cohen is pleading guilty to a number of charges, including campaign finance violations, tax fraud, bank fraud. Meanwhile, 250 miles south, President Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, has just been found guilty of 8 charges. Laura Coates, let me go to you. I guess the government will have to decide whether or not it wants to have another trial
guilty,
for these
you're
other
doing
10 charges. But these
time.
8 charges, that's very significant, and it does call into question why Paul Manafort did not agree to a plea deal.
Well, he's 68 years old, Jake. You're talking about 30 years for each of the charges, 240 years he's facing right now in prison if he actually does not have a successful appeal to overturn the convictions. He probably did not try to do a plea offer because he thought maybe there was a chance of pardon, and that's still out there. But 240 years, you're not talking about one life sentence for this 68-year-old man. You're talking about countless life sentences. This is a huge burden, and the government will not get greedy.
In the old ways, if their children had any ability to know what they were up to and did not report them, did not try to stop them in some way, they would have to report to jail when their parent died.
I predict to try to get him the remaining 300 years for each of those 10 charges.
All the way down to the third
Let me
generation.
bring in Preet Bharara, and then Preet, if you had been prosecuting this case, and let me just take a moment to break down the charges. 8 charges. Manafort was found guilty of 5 tax fraud charges, 1 charge of hiding foreign bank accounts, and 2 counts of bank fraud. These are all felony charges. They're very serious charges. 5 tax fraud charges, 1 charge of hiding foreign bank accounts, and 2 counts of bank fraud. Preet Bharara, if you were the prosecutor, would you just take the W and walk away, or would you try to also prosecute and the charges that were found hung, the 10 other charges?
Yeah, you might. This is so unusual, as I said a couple of times, insofar as there is another case pending against him in the District of Columbia. And I think what I would probably do is tell my folks, let's see why the case turned out the way it turned out in this case, see what the appropriate sentence would be on the charges of which he was convicted, and see how much difference it would make, if any, if we convicted on the remaining 10 charges, and also see what happens in Washington, that at the end of the day, maybe it's a wash, and you wouldn't get, more accountability by convicting someone of additional counts, depending on, how the guidelines work out, and what accountability is brought to bear in the District of Columbia case.
How soon do
But I would probably wait to see.
How long do they have to make up their mind about whether or not they want to retry the 10 charges on which he was the jury was unable to come to a verdict?
There's no absolute set time. Usually, as the court wants to know. In cases where we had mistrials frequently, I would announce immediately if there were no convictions at all, that we were prepared to go forward, so people knew that we were serious about holding the person accountable. But they probably will decide in a relatively short period of time.
And how, in terms of sentencing, you heard Laura Coates say there that Paul Manafort, if he is given the harshest possible sentence for all of these 8 charges, could be facing life in prison. I mean, it's 240 years in prison, and he's 68 years old.
People like this story.
How long do you actually anticipate? I mean, what's the average sentence for charges like this?
I mean, again, it depends on, I don't know which particular charges he was convicted of and what the dollar amounts were and what the other extenuating circumstances are. But, a white-collar case like this, you're probably talking about a few years. And when people cite those huge amounts, like life in prison or 300 years, they're going on what the statutory maximum is for every count. And the way the guidelines work often is, additional counts that you might be convicted of don't necessarily add any jail time, and they become sort of redundant.
And of course, then there's also the question about whether or not President Trump pardons him. Now, there has been some discussion of Some charges are state charges, some charges are not state charges in some of these cases. All of these are federal charges, so President Trump theoretically would be able to pardon him for all of them?
That's correct.
Okay, and Paul Manafort has acted as if he is a man that is not worried about this case. So one might wonder if he is counting on such a thing.
He may be. He was pretty brazen when he was on house arrest. And remember, in the other case in D.C. that I keep referring to, he's not only charged with the original counts that the prosecutors brought against him, but also witness tampering, and that's what landed him off of bail and back in prison to begin with.
Let me bring in Evan Perez right now for a little bit more detail on
hence the mistrials.
That's right, Jake. Well, we have now the details of exactly which charges. We're talking about the count 1 through 5, which were the tax fraud charges. He was found guilty on all those 5 charges, and those all carry 3-year terms that would be served concurrently. The count 12, which is the failure to declare a bank account for the year 2012, that carries a 5-year term, and then there's 2 charges of
hiding a foreign
bank fraud, which are 30-year terms for both of those charges, Jake. So Paul Manafort is looking at the rest of his life in prison when this is all over with, if this is allowed to stand.
All right, Evan Perez, thanks so much. I want to get reaction from my panel here. Sorry, guys, there's been quite a lot of breaking news. We haven't even taken any commercial breaks. Paul Manafort guilty of 8 charges. Jen Psaki?
Well, first of all, if you're President Trump and you have your campaign manager going to jail for a long time, you also have your personal lawyer going to jail for a long time, you're pretty freaked out. Ultimately, this is also a political question, not just a legal question for all of these people. At what point will Republicans in Congress stand up and say, this is not acceptable, this is not okay, there is something very bad going on here? We haven't seen a lot of courage on that front, but a lot more is happening that people are going to point to as and asking their members to stand up, I think.
Now, to be fair, these are charges, at least as far as we know, because we don't know what Michael Cohen's plea is, for things that happened before Donald Trump was president. Josh, I'm sure that's something a Republican would say.
I feel kind of like a one-trick pony on this, but I think we just continue to, it's so easy to conflate 2 issues. The Russia investigation that's ongoing with Mueller, and then what just happened with Paul Manafort. I mean, what happened with Paul Manafort looks like 5 convictions of tax evasion that happened over the previous decade and a half before you even met Donald Trump, right? So,
but Josh, look, Paul Manafort also was the guy who was overseeing the changing of the convention platform that made it friendlier to Russia. You have Michael Cohen, who is leading the Russia business dealings. There is more here than just this has nothing to do with Trump.
Again,
we'll learn more, but
we will learn more, and if it ever gets into that, then I will concede the point. But it hasn't gotten into that, and I think what you're introducing there is a bunch of facts that have absolutely nothing to do with the fact pattern that ultimately convicted Paul Manafort today.
Well,
and
let's
that,
just start. I think we have to remember we're at the beginning. This is not the end. What this case proved, what he was found guilty of, is broadly hiding money. When this goes to the D.C. court, they're going to look at whether he was acting as a foreign agent and also money laundering charges. You don't know where this is going to go, who it's going to touch, and I just think we should remind people, when Watergate happened, ultimately 40 government officials were indicted or jailed.
including
The pleas and the indictments are stacking up quickly. You have no idea how far this is going to go.
And I take your point, but I just want to point out that the money that Paul Manafort is accused of laundering or hiding, a lot of it is from people in Ukraine who have strong alliances with Vladimir Putin. That's just a factual that it happened before Trump, etc. But there is the cloud of Russia over this.
Looking at these cases, were Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort, although these are separate cases, are the prosecutors showing they were corruptible? And that's the big thing to keep in mind as we move forward.
Indeed. One of them rare occasions where the talking heads on CNN tell it like it is. And congratulations for Jake Tapper for having that news come out on his watch. Good guy. I don't trust Wolf Blitzer a tenth as far as I can throw him. fact, probably thrown pretty far. But Tapper and the Italian guy that looks like him. Fuck, what's his name? Shit, I know his name. What's his fucking name? Anyways, they're alright. The other guy, the Catholic, the fucking... I'm just gonna call him Tony. Tony. Hey, Tony. You alright by me, Tony? What the fuck is that guy's name? I can't remember numbers anymore because of fucking cell phones, and I can't remember names anymore because of Twitter. What's his Twitter handle again? Sure. So, Trump doesn't want to testify because he's worried about a perjury chapter. Now he's a non-indicted co-conspirator. including campaign finance violation. Oh, and Trump has now scrapped Obama clean coal regulation on coal-fired power plants. That's good. You know, because we're not poisoning the planet quick enough. Let's just go ahead and keep people from having to clean up the fumes they emit. And let's see here. Supposedly we're doing more sanctions on Russia. Let's see what the first 17 seconds of this is about.
The U.S. is slapping even more sanctions on Russia. The Treasury Department is sanctioning 2 Russian shipping companies it suspects are transporting petroleum products to North Korea, which
They've been telegraphing that move for over a year now. Isn't that special? If they would have done that a year ago, it might have been effective. And then maybe after putting that sanction on that Russian company that was helping North Korea, then they could have said, we'll take the sanctions off. Instead of stopping the fucking exercises with South Korea. And Turkey is just playing out this big fucking drama that I warned you about with Trump. And he is pushing them away. So, Anyways, once again, props to Microsoft for basically being our last remaining stronghold of fucking corporate infrastructure that can stop Russian attacks on American citizens. And shame on these people who try to marginalize what Russia did to us as a country by saying that, oh, Hillary colluded with the Russians too. Oh, Russia tries to attack all the elections. Oh, fucking... Jeez. Just one ridiculous thing after another. It's not just the Russians, it's the Iranians and the Chinese. No, man, it's really just mostly the Russians. There is virtually no influence of these other countries you speak of having any sort of influence on our elections. Russia is an enemy that the Republicans are supposed to know about. They just seem to have forgotten. So let's all pray that they fucking remember soon. Anyways. So, the moral of the story is, if Jesus came back, he would probably be a disabled person with PTSD. Because that's the fucking world we live in. This is all been surreal. I don't even know how to react to this news because it kind of seems too good to be true. Because if there's anything left of the rule of law, we might be looking at like a 7 p.m. Eastern Time resignation announcement. Because you can guarantee the fucking screaming has already begun. Oh, the phone calls that must be taking place right now. Oh, the drama that must be unfolding. Ooh. And Trump's gonna go hold a rally, huh? In West Virginia. Oh, that's hilarious. I almost want to see. So Trump called Manafort conviction a disgrace right before the, for fuck's sake. 7 seconds before you can skip it.
I feel badly for both. I must tell you that Paul Manafort's a good man. He was with Ronald Reagan. He was with a lot of different people over the years, and I feel very sad about that. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happened. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace.
Yeah, Manafort was just colluding with Russians before he got into your campaign, and your campaign just happened to collude with the Russians after they got rid of Manafort. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. It's surrounded by Russian collusion. But it's like a donut hole. It's not technically a donut, right? I can hardly resist. Let's see what this fucking moron's talking about. Oh, it's not on yet? Kind of feel relieved. Upcoming event. Oh, looks like there's going to be a 7 o'clock announcement of some sort. Motherfucker's going to be frothing at the mouth. I mean, this has to have him fucking rattled.
Daniel Goldman, you had something you want to quickly chime in, and I want to get the political panel back.
Sure, I have the plea agreement here.
Well, then go for it. Daniel
I
Goldman,
have the
breaking
plea
news.
agreement.
Give me the plea agreement.
And I wish I could have sent it over to Mimi, but it is a standard plea agreement. It is not a cooperation agreement. There is no agreement that Michael Cohen will cooperate with the Southern District going forward. Mimi mentioned something about whether he gets immunity for any conduct that he did not plead guilty to. There is one sentence about a credit decision from Sterling National Bank, which he was not charged with, but which he gets immunity from. Ordinarily, if this were just a simple placeholder, that Michael Cohen would be pleading guilty to the charges that are, to the investigative charges that are public. It was been reported about the campaign finance fraud, the bank fraud, and the tax fraud, which he pled guilty to. And then they were going to work through the cooperation at a later date. I'm a little surprised to see that he would get immunity. In addition, the parties do not agree on the sentencing range. That also indicates that there's some contentiousness or some disagreement among the parties. Well, no, they could be done. That actually, to me, indicates they are done. If this is a placeholder, they're not going to fight about everything. They're going to put this down as a placeholder and deal with it later. That's not to say they can't deal with it later, but it is a little surprising to see that there is immunity for something he's not charged with, and that they do not agree on the sentencing guideline range, which means that this is a negotiated plea agreement, so to speak, which ordinarily happens when there is not cooperation.
What? You know,
can't deal with it later, but it is a little.
before I like to go analyzing the exact specifics of what somebody said, I like to just take a long, hard look at them. Just look them in the eye. See what my gut tells me about them. He kind of looks like Odo from Deep Space Nine in the blurry version, if you're seeing it.
Surprising to see that there is immunity for something he's not charged with, and that they do not agree on the sentencing guideline range, which means that they are sentencing range. That also indicates that there's some contentiousness or some disagreement among the parties. Well, no, they could be done. That actually to me indicates they are done. If this is a placeholder, they're not going to fight about everything. They're going to put this down as a placeholder and deal with it later. That's not to say they can't deal with it later, but it is a little surprising to see that there is immunity for something he's not charged with, and that they do not agree on the sentencing guideline range, which means that this is a negotiated plea agreement, so to speak, which ordinarily happens when there is not cooperation.
Hello, YouTubers, if you're watching this.
Okay, so he read the words from a prompter below the camera on negotiated plea agreement.
If this is a placeholder,
well, let me back it up and just take a look at his eyes a little better.
Standard plea agreement. It is not a cooperation agreement. There is no agreement that Michael Cohen will cooperate with the Southern Districts going forward.
Look down again.
Mimi mentioned something about whether he gets immunity for any conduct that he did not plead guilty to.
Look down again.
There is one sentence about a credit decision from Sterling National Bank, which he was not charged with, but which he gets immunity from. Ordinarily, if this were just a simple placeholder, that Michael Cohen would be pleading guilty to the charges that are to the investigative charges that are public. It was been reported about the campaign finance fraud, the bank fraud, and the tax fraud, which he pled guilty to, and then they were going to work through the cooperation at a later date. I'm a little surprised to see that he would get immunity. In addition, the parties do not agree on the sentencing range.
Parties do not agree on the sentencing range.
Indicates that there's some contentiousness or some disagreement among the parties. Well, no, they could be done. That actually to me indicates they are done. If this is a placeholder, they're not going to fight about everything. They're going to put this down as a placeholder and deal with it later. That's not to say they can't deal with it later, but it is a little surprising to see that there is immunity for something he's not charged with, and that they do not agree on the sentencing guideline range, which means that this is a negotiated plea agreement, so to speak, which ordinarily happens when there is not cooperation.
Hello, YouTubers.
So we know that the key points of what he was saying weren't his own thoughts. Don't know whose they were. Could have just been Chuck Todd telling him what to say. But that's some pretty in-depth analysis for, just JQ reporter guy on the ground to be making. And it doesn't quite make sense to me. It seems as simple as this to me, that there's been a delay in sentencing. So that's time for negotiations. This whole idea of there's one avenue of immunity, basically, one statement of immunity from a certain crime, and that means that the negotiations have concluded. I can see why they would want to put that in there, considering the level of analysis that these things are subjected to and the level of obstruction that comes from that analysis. And B, who MSNBC would want to work with, not the Russians. And that tells me they're saying this for the same reason that the prosecutors put that in there in the first place, which was to maintain ambiguity. You see, by putting in there and having that indication that things are already settled, one would think that sentencing would go forward, but what that is actually ambiguous, but also leveraging at the same time. So while it's contradicted by the idea of the sentencing being delayed, it shows the leverage being applied to Cohen, and, you know, there's a carrot and a stick there. So it gives him a lot to think about. If he can come up with more that he hasn't told them, basically, he might just get some commutations. It's very clever when you think about it. The one thing they don't want to be concluded from this is that Cohen has made up his mind either way. They want it to seem like he's still holding out. They want it to seem like he's still being a little bit combative and is basically only strategically pleading while offering him this alternative path, kind of. But anyway, it's been a hell of a couple of show trials, that's for sure. And I think the only reason someone could fail to conclude that Donald Trump was the #1 enemy of the American public is an inability to think rationally and consider all the evidence before them. So, let him hide behind his rally and let them watch and try to do something when fucking federal agents come and take his ass away from that crowd in handcuffs. Go ahead, get a bunch of them in jail while they're not prepared for it. Anyways, it's going to be fascinating tonight to see how everybody's squirming. So, I'll see y'all then. Thanks for hanging out, people. And thanks for watching. And click the like button if you haven't already. And make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. And make sure the little dingy bell notification icon thing is pushed in, so we can all just pretend that YouTube will send out notifications and such. And, well, that's all for now. Y'all take it easy, don't take it all. Peace. I do run.
Back to breathe out of another thing. treated me too many times before. Don't you know you love them, baby, too? Oh, you know I want you there, I wanna be right there with you. I know I gotta keep you by my side.